Part of being a good leader is energising people and helping them find their energy.
Today I'm honoured to welcome Tony Smith, one of Rugby League's most accomplished coaches. He's led the Huddersfield Giants, Leeds Rhinos, Warrington Wolves, the England national team. He's built elite teams by mastering culture, relationships and tough conversations.
I was able to get the people around me to play better. If they played better, that made me look good.
I mean, because you mentioned culture earlier on, it's really important.
It's more than talent, and it's more than strategy, and it's more than tactics. It's number one.
What does it take to build and lead high-performing teams both on the field and in business? A high-performance culture is built on leaders who genuinely care about others succeeding.
All the principles of running your business are very similar to the same principles of running a team in sport. But if you want to be exceptional, your culture's got to be exceptional.
Your book deserves to be published. Visit selfpublishing.com/ActionCOACH right now. Let's do this.
It was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had to have with any player I've ever coached.
ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. What's the biggest lesson that every business leader listening to this podcast today can apply from rugby?
From rugby? They're very similar. All the principles of running your business are very similar to the same principles, the principles of running a team in sport. You know, and it's all about culture for mine. So many of my lessons in sport have come from business. When I left school, I joined the ANZ Bank in Australia and New Zealand Banking Corporation. I worked for them for 8 years, 7.5 years, and I learned it during that period of time how people interact with each other in a business world. And I applied many of those experiences to the sporting teams that I coached, not the other way around.
Really?
Yeah.
What were right? So it was lessons in communication, how people adapting to each other. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, how we treat each other, what sort of environment we create, how leaders within the business world can get the best out of the people that are their employees and the people that work for them within their team. Now, because of my sporting background also at the same time, sometimes I was able to help in that environment from my experience in sport, but I applied so many of the lessons on how I was treated and how within the business world, I applied that to rugby league. So I'll give you, for instance, my first ever bank manager, he'd just go straight to his office of a morning, come in after all the staff, go in there, and he'd yell out, "Cup of tea." That was my job. I was bottom of the tree, and I had to make the tea. So that was his greeting for all his staff each day. Well, that didn't go down well for me. You know, it didn't make me feel good. Not many of us within that environment actually had much respect for our leader. So just to give an example how I applied that when I became a head coach, every morning when my staff come into the office, I'd get up and shake their hand, come out of my office if I was in my office and shake their hand, give them a greeting each morning. Each time one of my players would turn up to work, I'd leave the staff office and go and greet them. "Morning, how you doing?" Shake their hand, make them feel like they were special each day. I didn't get that. So I learnt the lesson of how not to do things. And you know, during my time in my working career as well, I'd have some of those managers who did take interest in the staff, who did want to greet people and make them feel good and make them feel valued. And I could see the difference it made. And it made a difference to me. You know, I would rarely let down a leader or a manager that took interest in me and valued me. Yet I would let down a leader that would yell out for a cup of tea and not greet me of a morning. And sometimes I had some sick days. You know, never for the ones that I respected, for the leaders I respected, never. I wouldn't let them down. So I learned a lot of those lessons and was able to apply those simple things into the sporting world, not the other way around. I think, a lot of people think that because of my sporting background and what I've done in recent time, that's where I get my values from.
Respect, that's what stood out there. The importance of respect for others. And, when I think about rugby, there is a bit of a respect culture. If you compare that to a football culture that's, Premier League, what people see, there's certainly, you feel there's more of a culture of respect in there.
I think our sport, the sport that I've been involved in, does expect a certain amount of respect given over. But, in order to earn respect, you've got to give it first in order to receive it. And
it's kind of the same with most areas of life, that, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is why I'm saying
in order to get
it's
trust,
all the same.
You've got to give it first.
That's coaching a rugby team or leading a business are the same things, same principles. I don't see it as a difference. Some people like to go, "Oh, it's different in sport. They're all motivated, to win the competition." Well, no, they're not. Each individual within a team, no matter what the team, they have their own reasons for why they want to be successful. And sometimes we just think it's all about winning trophies. Well, some teams that I've coached never get a chance to win a trophy, and know that there's no chance of winning a trophy. There's some people who are there because they're good at that sport, or some of them don't even like it that much, but they're good at it. So they get well rewarded for it. There's different motivations. Some are there through necessity. That's their only way to earn income. I better be good at this. Otherwise, I don't know what else I'm going to do. Absolutely, it's the same. Each individual within an organisation has their own reasons and goals. Now, what good teams do is find some collective ones that they can work together to achieve also.
Just before we go into the collective goals and culture and team stuff, I just want to reverse back to something you said earlier on about taking interest, making people feel good, making people feel special. What are the key or best traits of a leader?
I think they care. I think they care about the people that work for them. I think they express that. They take interest in them. And if they don't, they're not getting the most out of the people that are working for them. And I'm going to refer back to leaving the office and going out and greeting people. I'm going to go back to that. It took up time. It took me away from some of the other things that I had to do in the day. But I thought it was worth it because it's more important for me to stay back and do that work I could have done later on in the day. It was more important for me to be there with my people and the people that worked with me and alongside of me, for them to feel like they were special enough for me to get up and take me away from some other things. But I'd get that in return through their performance. I also wanted people to want to come to work, and feel like today was going to be a good day. Well, if the boss comes out and says, "Morning, how you doing? How's things?" It makes it a whole lot easier to turn up. I show interest in them. How's the family? How's that other thing that you're doing in your life? Because we spent some time having a chat. I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it's actually creates more value to your business and to your sporting team or to your business team to take that interest. They know you care.
It's really easy to do. And Jim Rohn says, anything that's easy to do is easy not to do.
Yeah.
It's easy not to go in the office in the morning and say, how are you doing? How's the family? How's the weekend?
The other thing about that, I had to set the example. If I'm a good leader, I had to be the one that's up and ready to go. I set the tone for the day. If I'm moping around as a leader or moping in or go into my office and yell out for a coffee, or a tea, I'm setting the tone. It gave me a chance as a leader to set the tone for the day. have a smile on my face, go out there and energise people. Part of being a good leader is energising people and helping them find their energy. Because, there's so many things that are happening in all our lives that sometimes it isn't easy to go into work. But if there's somebody there who's going to greet you and have some enthusiasm, it helps you pick yourself up. So, that was my role. Some days, I might have had some things going on in my life as well. But if I've got to act in a certain way, I end up becoming happy again, because you've got to act that out. I've had a lot of experience in losing streaks. And my thing is, my coping mechanism used to be, what do the people that I'm leading need from me? Not how I'm feeling. Nothing to do with how I'm feeling. I'm feeling
really good question.
Sorry for myself at times, and that's natural. But I had to consider how the people that I'm leading would want me to act in order for us to get out of this situation. And that's my job. That's what I took on when I became a leader. That's or coach or,
Was that natural for you as a leader? Did that come to you natural? Like in bad situations, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what do they need from me?
I don't know if some of that is part of the way I was nurtured as well. I think my upbringing and some of the influences early in my life probably helped that.
Who?
My parents, my brothers and sisters. They're all quite a bit older than me. I'm the youngest.
Were you the youngest?
Yeah, by 10 years.
Wow.
So they were adults, young adults when I was a baby. So I had great parents in parenting, and then I had these other three that were like another mum and dad for me.
They did a piece of research actually on siblings. Mm-hmm. And they studied sort of Olympic medal-winning families. Mm-hmm. And the youngest won more medals.
Wow.
Because they got the learnings quicker, and the kind of the siblings raised them, and they passed on that sort of almost generational thing, but not quite a generation, but they passed it down to the next one. So they learned quicker, and they had an accelerated curve, and they won more medals.
That was never going to work for me in the Olympics. I wasn't a special athlete at all. That's also where, some of my learning came about. When I was real young, as a sports person, I was from a small country town, and I wasn't a bad rugby league player. So,
what was the country town?
A place called Casino, not the casino, but a casino. It's on the north coast of New South Wales, and I was brought up on a dairy farm and went to school in Casino. And I was probably a big fish in a small pond. And then when I got old enough, I went down and played professionally rugby league, and I quickly became a small fish in a big pond and realised that there's so many better players than me, and they were more skillful than me, they were faster than me, stronger than me. They had a whole lot of attributes that were better than me. I had a couple that I was okay at, but one of the things I learnt fairly quickly in that environment was I was able to get the people around me to play better. If they played better, that made me look good.
Your book deserves to be published, and selfpublishing.com wants to help make it happen. You'll work one-to-one with an author strategist to write, publish, and market your book the right way. With more than 8,000 authors and 100,000 books in print, they know what works. Ready to bring your story to life? Visit selfpublishing.com/actioncoach right now.
So if you're in a team that's going well and confident and achieving things, it rubs off. They lift you. That lifts your standard. So and some of this has been done in reflection, James, but I think I was coaching long before I retired.
Got it.
I was coaching the people around me, and it wasn't down to my ability in the actual game. It was my ability to get the best out of them and encourage them, give them a supporting arm when they needed it, give them a bit of a kick up the backside if they needed it. And if they responded, whichever they needed most, I was able to, pick that down to their personalities. And so some within your team, if you gave them a kick up the backside, they wouldn't respond very well. And some needed that, so learning about different personality types. I think I was doing that as a player in order for my progression, but the team's progression. So, to go into coaching after that. There's another reason why I went into coaching after that. I've got an elder brother who was a rugby league coach for 30 years at the top level. So I was 13 years behind him. So I was able to watch him go through his career and emulate some of the good things that he did and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes he made along the lines as well, and then work out how to make my own mistakes, if that makes sense. But I got nurtured even in coaching as well by the likes of my brother and being able to, be around that environment and see what it takes.
I love what you said there. The realization that I just had there is a good leader realizes or assumes that getting the best out of other people makes them look good. You see, it's quite common for people, if someone else is doing well and I'm not doing that good, I feel threatened by it. But what you've just taught me really there is leadership is getting the best out of others. And in doing that, it makes you look good.
It does. And it also lifts your own level. And I've got an example of that even in my sporting career. I played for a team called St. George Dragons, and we made a couple of grand finals. I've only played in a couple of good teams in my 11-year career. The rest of them, I was in rubbish teams, and that was mainly because of me. But I had this, and a great example of this, we had this young man, and people on that down under side of the world will know exactly who I'm talking about. We had this young guy coming through called Anthony Mundine. Now, he went on to become a boxer also, but he was a young guy, 16, 17, coming through, and we could all see he was going to be very, very good. He was talented at an early age. Well, he played a similar position to me. So instead of me trying to keep him at bay, I gave him everything that I could at that point in time. Now, I'm not taking any credit for his career. I'm not doing that at all. He was always going to be good. Whether I gave him anything or not, he was going to be good. But the way I saw it was, if I was able to help him and advance his career and make him better, and I wanted to keep my position ahead of him, I had to lift my game too. So it created and I knew he was always going to overtake me. There wasn't anything but it made me lift my levels because he was coming through. And later on, I did get some satisfaction in watching that young man go on to have a wonderful career and go, maybe I've had a little bit to play in that, maybe I haven't, but there's a great satisfaction in watching other people advance. That's a buzz that I've been able to have.
Kevin Sinfield said that as well, didn't he?
Oh, he does, yes. And Kevin,
did he get that from you?
No, he gets it because he's a good human being and matured in the right way. But he also valued the people around him and valued them and the lessons that they were able to help him with. And that was down to all sorts of leaders within the group. Whether I played a small part in that, I'd like to think so. But, Kevin would, through his own admittance, would have been, as a young guy, very self-driven and he was 100% applied to the cause, but probably for his self-interest first of all, but developed that ability to get the best out of others. I think we all start off and, thinking about the interest in ourselves and what we can do. That's part of our own driver. And then we get to a point at some stage and go, oh, there's a good buzz in helping others do this. And it actually helps me also. But I think there's more reward in helping somebody else.
Well, he is doing that now as well. So he's
Absolutely.
You've passed the torch on to him. Now, I sent him a text this morning, actually. You don't know this, but I told him I was interviewing you today. So I sent him a text this morning, and he's texted me back, and I've taken note of it. And he says he thinks about you a lot. He says you're a very smart coach, very strong technically and tactically, but the big thing that your players got from you was, especially the selfish players, the learned to also be selfless in your team. And he thanked you for that. And he said, please say hi from me as well.
Just on that note, I picked up the phone to him and left a voicemail on the way here to him to say I was coming to do something with ActionCOACH today, because I know that he's speaking later on in the year with you guys. So it's funny how things tie in.
Well, what about this selfish, selfless comment that he's made there, and how you got people in your team to be? I mean, because you mentioned culture earlier on is really important, yeah. And how did you navigate that selfish?
It's number one. It's more that
it's not really important. It is critical. It is essential.
It is number one. It's more than talent, and it's more than strategy, and it's more than tactics. It's number one, in my opinion, in the culture. Without it being strong, you can be okay, you can be decent, you can have some decent results, but if you want to be exceptional, your culture's got to be exceptional.
So as a coach, then grade yourself out of a technical, tactical, mental culture. Just grade yourself on that, so we've got a bit of a.
I'm not sure. At different stages, I've probably been at different levels, but I've often described myself. There's many more coaches out there in the rugby league world that are way better on some tactics and some strategies and their knowledge of rugby league, and they live and breathe the game of rugby league, and spend a lot of time, most of their time, involving themselves in watching video. And I'm not a rugby league anorak. It was my vehicle to coaching culture, I think. I really do. In reflection, I love the game of rugby league. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't just so I could, but I was more fascinated in the relationships and the team building and the culture than the actual game itself. It was more about how did we go about it? Did we apply ourselves wholly and solely into the result, or rather than the tactics of it? The tactics of it and the application are still important. I'm not dismissing those. What
is a winning culture?
Well, there's three. I think there's a dysfunctional culture where people don't care enough about the result and their own performance. That's dysfunctional when they don't. That's a dysfunctional culture in my view. A good culture is where people do care about the team's result, and they do care about their own performance. Now, a high performance culture is when they care about the result, care about their own performance, but care about each other's performance enough to help each other. That's high performance team, in my opinion. Now,
it's really good, isn't it?
Well, that's how I've been able to,
care about the result.
Define it.
They care about themselves, but they care about other people.
And how to get the people around them to perform to the levels that high performance teams want to go at.
Is that your philosophy then? Is that your coaching philosophy?
Pretty much, yeah. And when you get that, it's something special. And I think Kevin that's him. He bought into that and drove that, in my opinion, for many years after I'd gone. They had a very special culture there that they cared about their own performance, but they cared just as much about each other's performance. And that's really powerful stuff. Now, in amongst it, and Some of this is, I've learnt some of this in reading books and, and listening to other great coaches and people who have done more magnificent things than, I'd ever dream about to get some of these definitions. I was just doing what I thought came natural back then. I didn't know and didn't think too much about the 3 different categories of culture back then, and just try to apply the best I could and to the teams that I could. But I'm going to say to you, James, I reckon at different stages I've had teams that have been all those 3 in the 1 year. Start off dysfunctional, get to good, end up being a high-performance team by the end of the year.
Wow.
But I'm also going to say to you, I've had high-performing teams that then slip back into being good, sometimes even dysfunctional.
Let's go on that one first then. So that's called getting it wrong, yeah?
Yeah.
So just think of a time where you got it wrong. The culture it went from that to bad. What happened?
I think human nature comes into it for all of us. It hits all of us, no matter how driven we are. Complacency. Sometimes when you get success, you drop your levels. I don't have to quite work as hard or push as hard on certain things. And then it either quickly or slowly drops and you don't notice how much. And then it goes worse, and generalising here, it can be complacency. Sometimes it can be an addition of somebody who's not good for the environment too. You can go from, sometimes hiring somebody that comes in and they throw a spinner in the works. And, I've been guilty of doing that with different staff members or different members of teams, that didn't quite fit and, disrupted things. And sometimes you're able to reshape it. That's the beauty of culture. Once you get to culture, once you get a certain culture, it doesn't just stay there. You've got to work at it. You've got to, I like it as a garden, if you like. Once you get a nice garden, you've got to keep pruning it and you've got to keep fertilising it. And if you want to add to it and make it a bigger garden, you've got to put the right plants involved, into that garden. Otherwise, it can quickly go into a weed bed, if you're putting the wrong things together. You can't just sit back and go, we've got a great culture here, and you don't have to work at it. You've got to keep working at it, and probably even harder to keep it.
But on a practical level, what does that look like, pruning and keeping the culture? I mean, so there's getting this high-performance culture where everybody cares about everyone else performing really well, and themselves and the results, of course. But then we've got to keep it. So you've got to get it there. How do you keep it?
Not allowing complacency to creep in.
But how do you not allow complacency? It's normal, isn't it? It's comfort. Just sit back and relax.
I think the best way to answer it is to try and get better and better. So you've got to a good level. Can we take it further? What's the next bit? Let's find the next challenge together. Let's not be satisfied with what we've just got here. Can we take this to new places? And I think that's what good leaders do. We celebrate the victories, and celebrate certain achievements and levels that you are able to get to. But then you push it out a little further. And listen, I've been guilty of that complacency bit, at times, and going, I'll leave it to the team, or didn't drive it as hard as I should have, and, didn't put the next challenge out far enough. Maybe got a little comfortable with myself at different stages. That's human nature, and I don't like that when that's crept in me at different stages. But sometimes these things happen without you noticing it, or you're not making a conscious decision for it to happen until then you go, whoa, this has all slipped here. And it's recognising that. And that's what I think good leaders do, recognise, we've slipped here in our standards, or even me personally. Now we need to get back on track again. That's the beauty of it. It's not, I've got this cracked and we can just put our feet up here for here on in. But, the best teams that I've coached, and Kevin Sinfield was part of some of the best teams that I've coached, they were self-coaching. I could step back in that team. My best halftime, my favourite halftime talk with Leeds Rhinos and particularly with that team that I coached there, would go in and listen to what they had to say. They had to say at halftime and go, "Yeah, I think you got it." Turn around and walk out of the dressing room. That was my best and my favourite halftime.
How many times did that actually happen like that?
Yeah, plenty at different stages. When we were in full flow, they were. A lot of my coaching happened through the week. I wanted a team to take responsibility on game day. I was there to give a little bit of advice if I could, or if there was something that they couldn't spot, that's where I'd help. But if they were spotting everything that I was spotting, it was time for me to butt out, leave it to them. And when I was playing and in those teams, that we were taking ownership of our performance ourselves, despite the good stuff that we'd get from the coach, hopefully, and mostly it was. But we took responsibility for what was going on. We'd work out the problems. We'd work out what the opposition were trying to do to us, and that's much more powerful than somebody telling you.
I like taking responsibility of game day. That's a culture that you've created there, and in sport that works, doesn't it? Because there is a game day. In business, every day is a game day, really, isn't it?
It is.
So how do you get people to take responsibility in business compared to sport?
Well, you got to review your performance. There's some things that sport does well, and you're right. And I'll come back to and bring me back to that every day is a performance day. But in sport, we perform, we review it, then we go and practice, then we get ready for the next one, so our next opposition, and then we go perform again and do the same processes. So along the way, we celebrate the things that we got right based on our performance, but we'd fix up the things that we didn't get so right and go and practice those and prepare ourselves to not do those things again. And then we'd prepare for the next one and then go into battle again. And I took some of this from my banking days, because I used to make a whole lot of mistakes when I was in the bank, and some of that was down to...
Everyone makes mistakes every day, though.
Sure do. But then do we practice and train enough?
Or even review first.
Or review it. Why did that happen? What made that happen?
No, I think that's where it falls down in business.
Absolutely.
But it falls down at the first hurdle there.
I agree.
You just said, you perform. All right, why did this happen? Why did we make this mistake? Why did we succeed?
We don't do enough of that in business. And that's
how often should we review in business?
Well, depending on the performance. If somebody's performance isn't good, why is that? Why is it? We need to find out why their performance isn't good. Yeah. And often it's because we haven't trained them well enough to do that job well. Honestly, I was guilty of that. I was thrown into positions at a young age with little experience, and I was making mistakes. Well, my self-confidence went down. I didn't feel like I was good at that. I thought I was never going to be able to do it. I needed somebody to go, hey, let's do a bit of training with this. Let's go fix this up. Let's go, how can I help you gain your confidence? I needed some of that, and I got some of that from some leaders within the banking world as well. But we tend to think that in the business world that we just go and perform, and we might do a 6-month quarterly review or a 6-month review, and then all this gets thrown to the top of us. We're not performing that well. What training have we done? What have we done to prepare for our performance? And it's an element that I think needs to happen more often in businesses, and come up with in every walk of life. Why is something happening? And why is, what's affecting this young man's attitude or this young lady's attitude towards their work? Is there something that we can do to help them?
I think there's a big, powerful lesson here. And I've used this analogy before in business as well, because if we look at an organisation chart of a business, if you could go CEO, CMO, which is marketing sales, operations, CEO, and CFO. So there could be three big chiefs. Or a slightly smaller business, there'd be an MD, head of marketing, head of sales, head of operations, head of finance, head of HR. Quite often, there's no such thing as head of training. And just labeling that in a business, just literally recruiting that person, right? Now we've got a person that is totally responsible for everyone training in the business. And that's a piece of the jigsaw that could be missing in a lot of businesses.
Often it is. And a lot of businesses, and particularly small businesses, will say to you, well, I haven't got time. I haven't got time to do that.
I haven't got time to get better.
I haven't got time to do the training.
To get better.
For them to get better. I'm saying, well, is your business going as well as it could be? Maybe that time spent would be time worthwhile because your business will operate better with your staff getting trained more.
Starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? The good days you had and the bad. You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today. Visit actioncoach.co.uk.
But look, I haven't got time is classic limiting belief or excuse, whatever you want to call it. In fact, it's one of the biggest ones, isn't it? I don't know, I've not got time, being the biggest ones that are out there. In your coaching, how did you remove excuses or deal with excuses?
Yeah, it's asking the right questions. You know, as a leader, you know, or somebody who I was coaching, and ask them why, what processes did they go through. So if somebody had excuses, if it was somebody else's fault, you know, was the classic, well, I couldn't because well, what could you control? Regardless of somebody else, what could you do about that situation? Is it only because of what somebody else did, or was there something that you could have done to help them which would have helped yourself? You know, so you start to dig down deeper into people's rationale. And we all make excuses. That's our human nature once again. But this is what I used to say to all my players. We can act like just everyday person, or we can act like an elite sports person who takes responsibility. What do you want to be? Everybody, and do you want to have an attitude that makes you different, elite? Do you want to, you know? And this goes for business too. Do you want to just be okay? I'd often say and challenge my individuals, but my own teams, that we can be okay. Everybody can be okay. Do you want to be great? You know, great people take responsibility. Great teams take responsibility. And I'll tell you, every loss that we had whilst I was coaching, I was responsible for. That's my job. I was responsible for every single loss that I had throughout my career. Definitely down to me.
That's ownership, isn't it? You know,
it is.
True ownership is accepting that where you are right now is because of every decision and action that you've made.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's helping other people realise their part within that without devastating them. So I would take responsibility, but I'd also help each individual recognise their part in that result or performance also. So that takes some doing to think about and considering.
But painting the picture and using the question that you aren't asked is a really neat way. It's a bit sneaky because, you know, given if I had the choice of being average or being great, if I had the choice, which would I choose? So that's what I'm saying. Is a bit, the way that you didn't say it in those words, but you kind of,
Yeah,
it's
I did.
obvious. I'm going to choose this. So if realizing that you've got a choice is the job of the leader, of the coach, of dealing with the excuse, realizing, hang on a second, there is an alternative way of thinking here. Because as soon as you see that, most people are going to be compelled to go down that route, aren't they? I mean,
Most, not all do.
because of comfort.
Yeah, all sorts of reasons.
Like what?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. Some people don't like what they do. I've had rugby league players who don't particularly like playing rugby league, or get to a point sometimes where the pressure of performance is too much for them. It gets too much for them. But that's the role that they've gone down. It's helping them come through some of that. There's all sorts of reasons. I'm just picking a couple here. But it's my job as a leader to get them to enjoy performing again, taking some pressure off them. We all crack under pressure.
How do you take pressure off someone?
By giving them small little tasks to achieve and forget about the overall big picture that some other people are judging them on. Just take little bites and mouthfuls along the way to get your game back in order and where you feel confident again about what you're doing. And listen, in this, I'm telling you, this happens more often in this world now because people get reviewed in sport very quickly, and in business, you get reviewed in business also very quickly with social media, etc. Some of my players that I've coached in recent times, the first thing they do when they come off the pitch is turn the phone on to see what people are saying about their performance. We all think all these athletes that we watch on TV.
Did you ever do that as a coach?
As a coach? No.
Look in the media. I mean, you've been all over the newspapers.
I won't say I didn't look in the media, but I tried to keep away from it. I had the privilege of meeting a great coach many years ago at San Francisco 49ers, Bill Walsh. I was fortunate enough to have a lunch with him with a number of other coaches, and we sat around a table one day. And this is pre social media, I can assure you. So it was all written press back in these days. But he was a guru of coaching in American football, and I just sat there as a young rookie coach, listening to every word that he said, and took it all on board. But one of the things he said, don't read the press. He said, as a coach, don't read it, whether it's good or bad. Does you no good. He said, either way, it'll throw you from what's important. It'll distract you. He said, if there's something written that's untrue within the press that you need to address, somebody will let you know. So don't read it so as you be reading to make sure that it's coming across, or somebody's, so on the line. Somebody will let you know. So I tried to stick with that as best I could throughout most of my career. But I can't sit here and say to you, I didn't check it out sometimes. It's human nature to do it. I keep saying human nature. I'm just a
Did you ever take it personal?
Yeah, sometimes I did. And go, well, I'm going to show you. And this is my point. I don't think we can ignore social media for athletes anymore. It is just part of how they're raised and how they're brought up, and there's so many good things about it as well. But it's how they let it go through to the keeper, as I would put it.
It's just the same, though, for everyone, isn't it? Not just athletes, it's people's children. We can't ignore that there's social media there. It has implications on their feelings, and we have to be aware of this, yeah?
Absolutely. Just like in all different generations, these sort of things would happen. Nasty things used to be said to one another, face to face, when I was growing up. So you had to deal with it this way. Nowadays we're reading it, our children are reading it, and it's horrible. Some of the things are horrible, and it's hard. But this isn't new. Some of the problems that bullying and kids have always been bullied. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it, the sort of behaviour. What I would try to do with my children was make sure that they weren't the ones doing the bullying, and if I'd help them cope with if it's happening to them, and give them enough support. But it isn't going to go away. It's nothing new either. The way it's being conducted is a little bit new to my generation, but it's always been there. It's, cut down the tall poppy has always been there. Often, if somebody's excellent at something, you've got to try and cut them down to size. That's always been a part of human nature. So it's my bit for, the current or the athletes that I dealt with and the players I dealt with is, how are you going to use it? If somebody's negative towards it, like, you're going to read it, are you going to let it affect you to the point where your performance goes down and they become right about what they're saying about you? Or you're going to use that to motivate you to go, right, I'm going to stick it back to these people and show them how good I can be. So it's how you use that information. But there's no point in saying to people, don't read it, because they do now. It's easier for me not to read it because I'm from that generation that didn't read so much of those things.
Look, you've coached and managed and led lots of different people, and you're leading me to believe that you're just exceptional at getting the best out of people. What about perceived difficult people or mavericks? Have you dealt with any of those?
Plenty.
And how did you do it?
I love them.
What do you mean you love them? Why did you say that first?
I like different. I like having a team that's made up of different personalities, and I don't like when it's all easy. I like, sometimes when somebody is a little bit out there. He brings colour and he brings a bit of something different to the team. I don't want us all to be the same and soldiers and mundane. I like the challenge of coaching a maverick too. I used to get a buzz out of that.
Did you ever find it difficult to confront some certain people, like to tell them the truth or to confront something?
Yeah. We all find it difficult to do those things.
Is it easier with some people than others?
Absolutely. Yeah, you like some people more than others. You get on with people some more than others. You respect some people more than others. Of course, that's human. That's just being natural.
Did you master, though, confronting the people that you found it difficult with?
I'm going to say my answer to this is, as human beings, we all avoid the tough stuff. We all do. There's none of us that don't go to bed sometimes and thinking, I should have dealt with that today, or I walked past that today and I should have said something. Now, when I'm at my best as a leader, I wouldn't avoid the tough stuff for too long.
When were you at your best?
Different stages. Well,
okay.
And what I mean by that is, if I didn't avoid something, I knew I was near the top of my game. The less amount of time that I left a problem and dealt with it, that's when I knew I was on top of my game.
Is that the same for every leader?
I don't know about that. I don't judge people, other leaders.
I can relate to it, though. I can relate to that myself.
But we all do. It's often, and I often say this about my career, it's much easier to do it at work than to apply some of my own principles in your family home. And the reason for that, I've put down to, is it's more emotional at home. There is that, whilst I care about everybody at work, it's not to the same emotions. And most of the time, I was pretty good at controlling my emotions at work, whether that be during a game. I needed to be calm, cool, collected. I'm the leader. I've got to be even. I've got to be rational. I didn't let my emotions play too much of a role in my decision making. So I'd flatten it out on purposely. So I taught myself to control my emotions so as to make the best decisions for the team. Now, that also helps you not avoid things too. Don't get too emotional. Don't, but the other part of, I'd spend time thinking about how to best go about the hard stuff. What's the best approach? How's this going to be received? Rather than how do I feel about this? And if I considered how I feel about this too much, I would have avoided more. What I needed to do was go, right, this needs addressing. What's the best way about going about this to get the best result for the team? For the team. That was my job. That'd keep me on track so I wouldn't avoid things for too long. I'm also going to say to you, most of the things that we avoid, when you confront them, they're nowhere near as bad as what you think they're going to be, because we worry about things. And the other part about not avoiding things, we actually feel good when we take it on. It has the opposite effect. Avoiding it, I turn over and I'd get those butterflies and worry myself sick about. When I dealt with things, I actually felt good. Even though it was a tough topic, that's probably why I felt good. Well, I knew this needed to be addressed. I feel good now.
I like it. Let's label this as a difficult conversation so that everybody, whatever walk of life they're in, can relate to this. Now, so we've said confront it and you're going to feel better from doing it. It's never as hard as what you think it's going to be. What's the keys to conducting that difficult conversation brilliantly?
Considering how it's going to be received.
How do you consider how it's going to be received?
Knowing the people that you're speaking to and pitching it and placing it in the right, and phrasing it and communicating it in the best manner for them to receive it.
Do you have to prepare for this?
Absolutely.
What kind of preparation?
Thoughts, knowing who you're speaking to, and that's the advantage of getting to know the people that you're working with. You understand, you get a better understanding. We never entirely know how people are going to react, but the more I know you, if I was going to have a tough topic, a tough conversation with you, I got a fair idea how you're going to react. So how can I position this so you best receive it? You might not like it, what I'm about to say, but how are you best going to receive it? And I don't mean, and certainly would not involve any sort of deception or lie or stretching the truth, but put it in a way that, listen, this is going to challenge you. What I'm about to say to you, you need to consider and listen, I mightn't be entirely right with what I'm about to say to you, and I certainly mightn't be in your eyes. So I welcome any sort of comeback and feedback. Yeah. But let's do this in a respectful manner with each other. I'm going to do this respectfully to you and say what I think I need to talk to you about. And I want the same in return. So I don't want you to react in an unrespectful way or a disrespectful way, sorry. So you position the conversation to be hard. And I will say to them, I might be wrong about what I'm about to say. You may have a differing view. That enables them to have a discussion.
Well, do you know, I think it does a couple of things. It definitely prepares me to receive what you're about to say. So, and maybe the second bit that you said, I may be wrong, it might lower my guard down a little bit, my guarded response.
Sure.
So sure. I think that's really good advice.
Can I tie this into something that we spoke about earlier, and I'm sure Kevin won't mind me having this. One of the most difficult conversations I had during my rugby league coaching career was to leave Kevin Sinfield out of the national team. He'd been my club captain. We developed a mutual respect, I think. I think it's fair to say that during my time as his club coach, and I went on to become the international coach, and I picked him in one series, but I left him out of another. And it was one of the most difficult things I had to do. Did I avoid it for a while? Absolutely, I did. And did I have somebody who I knew was going to disagree with me, and somebody who I cared dearly about? It was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had to have with any player I've ever coached, because I knew the disappointment but it was a decision that I felt was right. I'm not sure that I was, but I made it based on what I knew at the time or what I thought at the time. Now, it was hard. It was tough. It was tough for me to do that to somebody I respect so much and respected so much, and then deliver it. But it was also hard for him to accept it and understand it and even agree with it. And I don't think he did. And I respected that fact too. But it was certainly one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had to deal with.
Did you lose sleep before it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I cared. I cared about him as the person, But in my mind, it was the right decision at that point in time. Now, Kevin went on to represent his country again after that, and went on to have a very successful international career as well. Can I also say to you, if I was ever to put a team together and, in a time warp, and I could take Kevin Sinfield back to be club captain of that team, he'd be the first person that I'd pick to put a team around. So this is the sort of levels I had Kevin, and at club level he would have been the first person I ever picked. International level, I just made a judgment that I didn't think that's what we needed. Now, whether he went on to prove me wrong or it motivated him, I'm not sure, but it was difficult. But did I avoid it? Absolutely, I avoided it for a while. But
for how long?
Oh, I can't remember, but I can remember, going to his place and sitting down and having that conversation. And
did you go to his home?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I thought he deserved that with what we'd gone through together prior to that. So, you can't always do that. You can't always go to each person's home to deliver them.
Well,
but there was enough respect I had for him to deliver it in the most comfortable environment that I could picture for him.
If you're an ambitious business owner eager to unlock the next level of growth, then the UK's biggest business event is the place you need to be to grow your business.
Hi, I am Rachel Riley, and I'm really pleased to tell you that I will be the host of BizX 2025. 3 days of speaker sessions, interactive events, and a few surprises along the way, so you are not going to want to miss it.
The event You Need to Grow Your Business is happening from the 2nd to the 4th of April in Farnborough. Tickets won't be available for long. Get more information by registering your interest at thebizx.co.uk. BizX 2025, where ambition meets action.
What emotions were going through your veins as the leader when you were walking to his front door?
Oh, turn around, run away.
And,
like.
And what about the emotions when you walk back to your car?
Yeah, I felt for him. I felt for him. I care about him. I know I saw the disappointment.
Interesting that. So,
I hope he's okay.
By the way, I'm really pleased you said that, because you didn't say relief. You said, I just bothered about him. I felt for him. That's what I felt when I walked back to my car. Because you care about people.
Listen, yeah, I do. I care about people. And some of my decisions, lots of them throughout my life and career, have been wrong. Lots of them. But I'd like to think, based on what I believed and what I thought was right, was the reason why I made that decision at that point in time. It was never to hurt anybody, or it was never to, stifle somebody's career. I was always trying to do the best for either the team that I was responsible for or the club that I was responsible for, I had to make some tough decisions from time to time. But it was never, and it was always done with, in my head, the right intentions for the right outcomes.
I'm going to position this question using some of your language. What words of encouragement, support, or kick up the backside would you say to the listeners right now for the difficult conversations that they know they need to have?
Yeah, most of us know that we need to do those things. And once again, it's avoidance, but do it. Think about how you're going to do it. Consider it, but don't keep avoiding it. It's not fair. It's not fair on the people that are involved. If there's something that needs to be addressed, and it's tough. It's tough to address your culture in a place. Most of us know, when our culture isn't great, or something's not quite right within it, or some member of staff isn't quite the right fit, or not acting in a way that they fit at the moment, but we're worried about confronting it. It does you more harm, and it hurts the business that you're running and the culture that you're trying to create. It hurts it more by not doing it. The sooner you go and do it, the closer you are to fixing it. But one of the other things that we also avoid, we think there's going to be confrontation. It needs to be done in a way that is respectful, so you avoid confrontation, but certainly have a discussion about it. And often when you confront these issues, and if it's a bit about personal, often person's not aware of that themselves. So, and how are they ever going to fix what needs to be fixing? If you think something needs to be fixed either in a personality or the way somebody's doing their job, sometimes they're just doing and they don't know how they're affecting, or they're saying things and they don't know they're saying what they're saying is abrasive to other members of the staff or to you or to the business or to customers. Often they're not aware. So, and nobody can change anything about themselves until they're aware of it. And then they've got a decision once they know. So have that awkward conversation. Don't avoid it. Put over what your thoughts are. Give them some time to contemplate and assess themselves, and give them also an avenue where they can come back and talk about it. And sometimes it's right then and there isn't the right time. Go away, think about this, come back to me, and let's have another discussion about it when you've filtered that through. And more often than not, if you're right about what you're confronting, people come back and say, I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. I didn't like what you said to me, but I didn't know I did it. So then they've got a choice of whether they want to change it or not.
Beautiful.
Can I say that really it should be the other way around too? That the people that work for you should be able to come and say that to the leader as well, and creating a culture where they, not only do you go and help them with the tough stuff, that you create a culture, hey, let me know if there's something that I need to change in order to help you.
Yeah, look, that whole 360 feedback thing is a big, powerful thing in business. Now, there is one person in particular, the guy called Daniel Priestley. He taught me this phrase, and I've used it so many times since he said it. For your team to feedback, he uses this phrase, and now I do. There is nothing that you can say to me that will offend me. You can give me any feedback that you want. Nothing.
Awesome.
And in some ways, it's empowerment for me to get the feedback. It's like, I'm not going to take this personal, and you can give me it, but then you've got to not take it personal as well.
Well, and we all do to start with. That's how we then filter it, and then we go away and think about it, and then we go, oh, well, actually, yeah, he's right, I a little bit of that, and then you go, and you get your head around it, and then you go, no, he's right. And you go back and address it.
I dare say some of the listeners are going to use that phrase now as well.
Yeah. Now, listen, that's when you've got a high-performing team, once again. If you've got a leader who can do that and create that environment where it can come back the other way, and, hey, I'm not going to be offended. I think that needs to be set. That sets the tone. Why should it be the other way around? Just the leader can go off and, tell everybody what they think about, their behaviour or how they're acting or their performance. It should be the other way around too. It's got to be. If you're going to be a high-performing team. Can I just throw one other one in now that I remember? You mentioned about having somebody in charge of training within business and probably not enough training. And same. I feel this. I certainly believe culture's number one. Within an organisation. How often do we hear of a cultural manager within an organisation? Who takes care of that? How often do we talk about culture within our businesses and our teams? How often does it rate a mention? We do performance analysis and we do all sorts of statistical analysis. How often do we actually sit around and go, what is our culture?
What's the good bits of the culture at the moment? What's the bad bits of the culture at the moment?
How are we going to measure this? How do we do it? I think it's the big. I think the training aspect of it. Yeah. But I also think talking about and delving into culture is where a lot of businesses and teams fault. I think they miss it, and I put it as number one. I don't know how many other leaders out there do, but culture is your identity. Why shouldn't you spend a lot of time talking about it?
You've made the points really well and clearly. I've got a few quick questions to wrap up with. So, what's the biggest sacrifice that you've made in your career?
Oh, probably my family at different stages and early part of their lives, and my commitment to my career. I'd probably justify some of that, in my own head, not that I think it's right, that enabled them to do a whole lot of really good things, and cool things throughout their lives. And often I wasn't part of that, and I would have liked to have been part of that. But, there's certain sacrifices that you make throughout, and some of them are conscious ones, and some are not. I'm going to mention this one. I did some mentoring of Rob Burrow before he got ill, and I'd got the feedback. He asked me would I mentor him when he decided to coach at juniors levels, the under-19s, and he probably wasn't doing the right amount of hours that was perceived for a young coach to do. And so in amongst it, and I had that feedback, so I was feeding that back to him. And he said to me, I said, Rob, if you're going to be a coach, you've got to do, before the sun comes up until the sun goes down, they're the sort of hours. And he went, Tony, well, if it means I'm not going to be a coach, I'm not going to do it because my family comes first. And this was a couple of years before he got ill. And that young man showed his determination, but he really meant his family was number one. And it made me feel a bit, wow, I wasn't that strong. I pursued my career at times and made those sacrifices, and there can't be any bigger sacrifices than your family, or time with your family. So I learnt from Rob on that day and sort of reflected back and went, I wasn't strong enough to go, well, I'm not going to be a coach if it means staying away from my family. So, but I'm not sure I would have been the person that, or the best person I could be for my family by not doing it. I think I needed to do it in order to be good for them. That's how I justified it a little bit.
Yeah, what a beautiful story as well. I've got a tear in my eye there. What's been the hardest lesson that you've had to learn?
I don't know. There's just so many of them. throughout your career. You know, I can look back and make plenty of mistakes, but I tried to make them based on the information I had at that point in time. But, you know, there's certain times where I got complacent and hadn't driven the team enough, or, you know, haven't driven myself enough at different stages. So, but I try not, you know, I try to recognise and put my hand up at different stages to myself, and you know within yourself whether you're at your best or not. And there's times where I haven't been at my best, but delaying getting on with it, like recognising it and go and putting it off. And, you know, at different stages, there's been times where I have delayed it for too long, but get on with it. You know, don't beat yourself up about going through a lull or making mistakes. You know, it's get on with the next part of it. Certainly recognise that you don't like yourself when you're in that mode of not making the right decision, or not pushing yourself in the right way, or not being motivated enough. But recognise that in yourself and get on with the next bit. Do something about it. And yeah, I've been okay at that through most of my career.
Big lesson. What's the most beautiful thing in leadership?
I'm going to relate it to being like a parent. I think all of us, most of us as parents, want their children to have a better life and be smarter, better and wiser and all sorts of things than you were, and not and I'm not going to say not make mistakes, because that's necessary. They need to make mistakes, your children, and in order to learn the proper lessons. It's just inevitable. But we don't want them to suffer the big stuff. And I think being a good leader is very, very similar to your family. I think leaving something behind, and, you know, I have some great phone calls from time to time from somebody I've coached 20 years ago that connects with me, and we talk about a tough period that we went through. I never get anybody ring me up and talk about the trophies that we won or the good times. Never. It's when we were going through tough times and the lessons that we learnt back then. And sometimes somebody goes, you had an impact on me at that point in time. Wow. That, you know, I think that's what we should be as human beings. We all should want to make each other better.
What's the best gift you can give anyone?
Support.
Why did you choose support of all of the things you could have chosen?
Well, support probably sums up, you know, when you're able to help them when they need help, or when things are good, you're still there. You know, I think by giving support, it means you're there through all of that. And I think that's the art of coaching as well, I think, is knowing what to say and when to say it, and when not to say anything, which is more important than anything, and listen, you know. But that's support. It isn't all about telling. It's not, you know, I know we've done, you know, I've done a lot of talking here, and we do as coaches. We over-talk as coaches. The best support sometimes is just sitting there and listening. That's, you know, it is the most powerful one.
It is. There was a professor, or a professor of emotional intelligence of all things, Dr. Martin Newman, and he said something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. He says, the biggest skill in the world at reducing resistance in any area of life is listening. That is the number one skill in the world at reducing resistance, the pain that you're feeling, in any area. Whoa, very powerful. You just said the same. So now that people have listened to this, what should the headline be for this podcast? What do you reckon?
I don't know. I'm not a creative person. I'm a people person. I love relationship building, and I'm fascinated by, you know, relationships and culture within, you know, which make up, relationships actually make up the culture, don't they, within your team? No, but creativity isn't my number one. I'll leave that to you.
We've got the areas to include that. But now they've listened to this, what encouragement would you give them in terms of the next action that the listeners should do? They've listened to this. What's the next step?
Keep on exploring and learning about leadership. If you want to be a leader, I think everybody needs to be a leader at some point. All of us do, within our families or within our professional life. We all need to be able to have the confidence to say when something's not right, or say something, or being able to say when something is right and throw your weight behind it. That's about self-confidence. But go and explore the many, many different ways of. I'm fascinated by it, of leading and following. Knowing when to follow too. We see a lot of books on leadership. I think there should be a book on following too. What good followers do, and there probably is some out there, but
they do get. There's a bad sort of name to a follower, really, isn't there? Just because of the word.
But we all need, we all need to follow at times, and there's times that
maybe you have to write the book.
That might be
next. You know what? My favourite part of this there's been several. Love the three sort of levels of dysfunctional culture, good culture, great culture. Love that. A good leader realises that they can get the best out of others, and that makes them feel good. Love that. Avoiding complacency. The best way of doing that is to just, what's the next? Let's move on to what's next. But hands down, my favourite bit is when you said, I was at the top of my game when I knew I wasn't avoiding the tough conversations. As a leader, I was at the top. That's been my favourite part. What's been your favourite part?
I love all these. I just like having these discussions. I really do. I have many of these discussions with some really lovely people in my life, and whenever I get to talk about leadership and coaching and culture and teams, I'm learning. I remember some stuff that I'd forgotten. It reinforces some of my beliefs. So just having these sort of discussions, this makes it a great day for me. I enjoy it. It's my passion. It's what makes me tick, if you like. So I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Tony Smith, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.